Here we go. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Or let's see, is it Oyasumi?
That's good night.
Oh, that's good night. Oops. So, yeah. Ohayou gozaimasu. Thank you. Yeah. 日本語はちょっとだけできますよ。Yeah. But 勉強しませんでしたよ。けど中国語はよくできますよ。So my name is Jeremy Goodwin. I am the CEO of SyncFab, and I'm here to talk to you this morning about blockchain in the manufacturing supply chain. So what is SyncFab, and why are we all here? How is blockchain going to revolutionize the supply chain, and what is in it for the manufacturing industry? I heard a gentleman earlier ask about the incentive structure of blockchain, which is a very good question, because the incentive alignment principle, although it's just one feature of the blockchain technology, it's a core feature, which I hope by the end of today's presentation I will have succeeded in highlighting for each of you how the incentive compatibility principle serves as the grease to the gears of blockchain that will transform the manufacturing supply chain as we know it today and accelerate the ramp up to the fourth industrial revolution. So, as I'm sure you well know, this is a very good time for the manufacturing industry. Reported recently by the JP Morgan Global Manufacturing PMI, the global industry stands at a value of about $12 trillion, representing more than 15% of global GDP. And just as of last month, it grew at its fastest rate since March of 2011 and is expected to continue growing at this rate through the same time next year. In addition to that, we have the emergence of an entire new industry, the industrial Internet of Things, that's estimated to be valued at $4 trillion, which is a new third of the existing global manufacturing industry by 2024. Now, the mobilization of investment required to achieve that is massive. In addition to that, because of a lot of these trends, the U.S. is projected once again to recapture the #1 position in the manufacturing industry by 2020, according to studies by Harvard Business Review, Boston Consulting Group, and McKinsey Global Institute. So being positioned in the US and in California is advantageous to learning about these new manufacturing technologies. And the projected federal spend of $1 trillion in infrastructure investment, if that takes place, will only further accelerate this trend. And what's very exciting is we are at the doorstep of this fourth industrial revolution, which is being facilitated by the rapid technological innovations in advanced manufacturing. So robotics, industrial automation, CAD/CAM, artificial intelligence, machine learning, material science, but arguably none of them is going to contribute more greatly to the efficiencies required to achieve the advent of the fourth industrial revolution is blockchain. Now, why is that? So in order to understand the benefits of blockchain, we first need an overview of the basic needs in the manufacturing supply chain. So take Mitsubishi, for example, a very broadly diversified global conglomerate, active in industrial finance, energy, metals, machinery, and chemicals, with over 200 offices in some 90 countries and a network of 1,200 group companies and a multinational workforce. Over 70,000 people, that's very impressive. And it requires a very diverse supply chain to power it in the auto industry, heavy industry, and electronics. So what you require is a very responsive supply chain for your just-in-time production needs. You require traceability in your supply chain so that you can locate where your parts are in the supply chain at any given point in time. You require accountability in your supply chain to prevent order reneging and for recourse on poor quality control or incomplete information or certifications. And the supply chain security is a paramount need for the protection of your intellectual property and other assets. So, how is the manufacturing supply chain today meeting these needs? Well, what's happening is, in order to achieve those security requirements, companies like yourselves are investing heavily in trusted supply chain networks. You have your internal product program managers, you have your supply chain purchase managers, you have your pre-approved tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 supply chain suppliers, you have your manufacturers reps, you have your line engineers, relationships with their local shops, you have your banking, your project, and your trade finance relationships, and of course you have your third-party logistics relationships. Now, these definitely give an air of exclusivity to the business, and they're a premium because you've invested heavily in them. However, they also tend to be rather opaque. They can be difficult to trace from time to time. They can be relatively slow in responsiveness, and as I just mentioned, by highlighting that they're heavily invested, they're very expensive. In order to achieve a sense of security, you have highly centralized asset control, centralization of your equipment and machinery, your intellectual property, your petty cash, cloud-based enterprise resource management systems, technical documentation centrally stored for easy access. Now, these feel secure, but the primary protection measures that you're using are firewalls. And those firewalls, as has been recently proven, they are hackable. JP Morgan was hacked. Home Depot was hacked. Even the federal government was hacked. These firewalls can be hacked. It also requires the centralization of these assets in the supply chain. It requires synchronous infrastructure amongst your third-party and external supply chains. And if something is not organized centrally and properly centrally stored, it's very difficult to find. Another characteristic of modern supply chain is that most of it is metric driven for CapEx budgets. So this is obviously very good for making retained earnings versus research and development, reinvestment decisions, financial planning for sales and marketing, and also for calculating total landed cost for your supply chain. But do they provide a sufficient incentive to mobilize the resources needed to be competitive when the fourth industrial revolution arrives? And it is coming. So, is manufacturing working as it is? If it isn't broken, then why fix it? I mean, we are in very good times right now. And I sometimes hear comments from sideline observers, not direct industry participants who haven't felt the pain of supply chain bottlenecks in detail. They'll say this from time to time, and definitely venture capitalists. But it is no secret to industry insiders that manufacturing and the supply chain in particular is very complex and is highly inefficient. And market conditions being as great as they are now, they tend to fluctuate, and it's best to innovate when times are good. As Peter Drucker, the author of Next Generation Manufacturing, wrote, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So, what are the benefits of blockchain in supply chain, and how can they be better met by supply chain? So one is the centralized asset control that I mentioned previously. Because of the global distributed ledger, it creates a security opportunity decentralized, and this is the highest form of online asset security protection available. Additionally, it provides offline protection that's superior to NDAs. Currently, most are protecting their intellectual property in the form of centralized enterprise resource management tools and online NDA protection. And this essentially replaces firewall protection dependence. We also have the incentive multiplier. This was something that I wanted to leave towards the end as a blockchain kicker, if you will. But it got reorganized by my designer, so I'll just go with it. So the incentive compatibility multiplier, essentially, it's what is referred to sometimes as the Satoshi Nakamoto principle. So it was designed into the original Bitcoin blockchain to ensure that user behavior is properly checked and that incentives are properly aligned. Because of this, all the participants in the blockchain are ensured to be compliant with the requirements, say, of the blockchain interaction on a particular node at a given point in time. Now, because of this, when the incentive compatibility principle is properly designed, it can provide further incentive in the context of a supply chain blockchain for a more responsive supply chain. This is something I will discuss further on when I get into our product. But also, it mobilizes aggregation of marginal gains necessary to orchestrate added support for the on-ramp to the industrial Internet of Things. Again, more about this later when I discuss our product. Additionally, it allows for the execution of these trust-free smart contracts. So whereas organizations currently are investing heavily in these relationship-based trust networks, you have these smart contracts which are self-executing on a trustless network that can self-manage their own performance-based payment system. And because of that, it allows for procurement that is much more streamlined and free of broker fees, which is more efficient and accelerated. Now, what's very exciting about blockchain, and perhaps this is the right point to end with on this slide, is the prospect of the ledger of things. Now, with its traceable architecture, it provides the foundation for a truly transparent supply chain and enables data collateralization, which can be a game changer in the age where data is becoming the primary digital asset, differentiating between different manufacturers' competitive edges. And this is a dream come true for product lifecycle management. The ledger of things will allow for true traceability and true transparency in the supply chain, and it will likely replace the need for cloud enterprise resource management systems. Oops. So a use case example for blockchain in the supply chain is product data management. So say you're a product program manager, and one thing you want to prevent is disruption in your supply chain, because disruption in the supply chain is one of the greatest sources of loss in the manufacturing industry. If the right part doesn't arrive in the right place at the right time, or because it came with the wrong certifications or the wrong instructions, because somewhere in tier 1 or the tier 2 or the tier 3 supply chain, they forgot to include those certificates or publish them at the right time. Well, on the blockchain, you can track parts and order data for your suppliers, along with their technical instructions and certifications. Think of it sort of as a birth certificate registry, if you will, for each part or component that goes into a final product that can track the location of the supplier, the original supplier, as well as the end user at any given point in time. And the value of that is tremendous in terms of product lifecycle management, whether it be for pre-production planning, whether it be for production planning, post-production planning, and lifecycle repair and maintenance, for technical manuals or user manuals. The value of this is tremendous. Now, those records that are on the blockchain, they're immutable, which means that they cannot be tampered with and they won't be changed, as well as meaning that when the authorized user of that information accesses it, you can be sure that it's the right version, it's the most updated version, and you don't have to worry that there's some other version out there floating around. Additionally, it's secured by a digital token so that only the authorized user can access it with the right credentials. So for sensitive industries like defense contracting industries, this is very important and very useful. And it's infrastructure agnostic. So as you are working with a more diversified and expansive supply chain across different database architectures with distributed information systems that are not directly connected, the implementation of the blockchain allows, because it's infrastructure agnostic, you still have access to their database archives, giving them the proper permission. So the implications of this technology for the supply chain industry has such a wide impact that when Deloitte recently did a survey of executives in various industries upon who is planning to implement blockchain solutions in their supply chain, the highest percentage of respondents were in the supply chain industry, 58%. And interestingly enough, the lowest number of respondents was in the financial industry, just 36%, which is quite interesting given the origin of the blockchain technology with Bitcoin and how it's associated now with speculation and payments and financial transactions. But as I previously explained, how it carries such tremendous application in the supply chain industry. So what is SyncFab? So basically we've created on the Ethereum blockchain a smart manufacturing decentralized application. And it connects supply chain purchase managers directly with their hardware manufacturing suppliers, peer to peer, for streamlined procurement on the blockchain. So essentially eliminating the brokers. Now, the way it works is essentially on the blockchain that we've built and the supply chain purchase manager and hardware supplier ecosystem that have populated the blockchain that we've built the protocol for, that the supply chain purchase managers will be able to search and procure parts on the blockchain using our decentralized app along with a suite of other services that are powered by the blockchain to essentially secure and streamline orders executing or initiating these, initially defining and then initiating these smart contracts that fit their particular requirements or specifications for a particular part, a particular process, a particular material, in a particular location, according to a particular turnaround time and a particular budget. And these smart contracts will be self-executing to the extent of matching up those prior parameters that I just mentioned in terms of process, in terms of availability, in terms of material. And also in terms of turnaround time. So as long as the turnaround time is properly met, then the components of the financial value of that contract will unlock accordingly. Now what's really interesting is also in terms of quality control. So for quality control right now, you will get these quality control reports that are usually written reports delivered by the shop and delivered together with the parts. Now what we've done in our current form is we have digital quality control inspection verification reports that are delivered prior to the delivery of those parts to make sure that the supply chain purchase managers can first inspect those reports, pre-approve them, and then those parts can be shipped. Now, as a part of the migration to the blockchain and for what we are looking at, so blockchain is referred to sometimes as 3.0, which I find fascinating because in the context of where we are now with Web 2.0 and the fourth industrial revolution, when I get more into the incentive alignment principle, it speaks to that necessary bridge between where we are today and where we need to get with the fourth industrial revolution. But back to quality control, as a part of the parameter of the smart contract, the quality control process where those specifications need to be checked by the shop according to their machinery requirements. Those are fed and monitored directly by the smart contracts, and once fulfilled, only then will the value of the contract be unlocked and essentially distributed to the supplier. And then lastly, that record of that part procurement, the supplier where it originated from, the associated instructions that go with it, the technical documentation, certifications if they're required in the aerospace industry, the automotive industry, defense contracting, will accompany that and will be recorded permanently in the global distributed ledger and accessible only by authorized users. So again, infrastructure agnostic across the supply chain. It carries tremendous implications. So SyncFab, essentially the world's first decentralized smart manufacturing supply chain blockchain protocol incentivized for just-in-time production by the MFG token and secured for product lifecycle management and a suite of additional blockchain-powered services using our smart manufacturing DApp. As Kyle mentioned previously, the difference between public and private blockchains, in order to fully leverage the power of the blockchain, although these private permissionless blockchains feel like they're more secure and more relevant to private enterprises and seem to be the cautious approach to take in the early stages, again, because of the incentive alignment principle and user behavior checking, we feel that the public blockchain can be used essentially for, especially where you have very expansive supply chains that span different geographies, different database architectures, because of the protection parameters that are within the blockchain itself, be it the consensus protection feature, be it the cryptography of the records themselves. The blockchain is extremely difficult to hack, especially as it continues to evolve. I'm not going to get too technical into the difference between the Bitcoin blockchain versus the Ethereum blockchain, but a lot of improvements have been made on the Ethereum blockchain, so that's essentially more secure than the Bitcoin blockchain, for example, because it was previously believed that 51% of the miners, as long as 51% of the miners' consensus was not breached, then the integrity of the entire blockchain could be maintained. However, it was discovered subsequently that only 33% was required. Patches are currently being deployed for that, but that is not a weakness that currently exists on the Ethereum blockchain. So that being said, we feel that in order to fully leverage the scale of the blockchain, that a public-private hybrid is relevant and is necessary. So because of that, we engage in public-private partnerships offline as well. An example is we work with the city of San Leandro and the city of San Francisco. We have a service agreement with the city essentially to migrate their manufacturers onto our platform and to integrate them into our service. It's in the form of an economic development arrangement, but it's also working together to progress the industry. So in that name, we also are a part of a federal partnership called the Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute. It's a very long acronym. And there's two big innovations, two big initiatives in there, the clean energy and the smart manufacturing. The smart manufacturing, more relevant to this, speaking to the aggregation of the data and the pooling of big data in the manufacturing industry so that it can be leveraged to optimize processes, to optimize material usage. And then the clean energy component, that's related to the Department of Energy with this new ISO 50001 certification, which is in its infancy. So working in these public-private partnerships offline, they help accelerate the mission of the public-private blockchain hybrid that we're looking at to fully leverage the capabilities and the functionality of the blockchain. Other logos on the slide also include some other partners that we're working with in the academic field and other partners. So the incentive alignment principle, essentially what we're looking to do is we've, on this public-private blockchain model, this public-private blockchain protocol that we've designed at SyncFab, there are tokens. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize it was going that long. So there are tokens to execute many of the essential actions in a manufacturing supply chain. So there's tokens for RFQs, there's tokens for engineering change requests, there's tokens for reorders, there's tokens for product data management, and there's tokens for product insurance and other offsets. That's a very new feature that I'm probably going to leave aside today, but it's a very exciting one, so I figured it was worth mentioning. Sorry, a lot of notes here. So what we were really looking to do when we designed the smart manufacturing supply chain protocol was to really leverage this incentive alignment principle. So secured by the MFG token, the protocol is launching a blockchain efficiency optimized for the new economy, the crypto economy, a substitute for the existing manufacturing supply chain incentive structure that will include the following two features amongst others. So what we're looking at doing is creating a recurring incentive model compensating suppliers for their order response time with these tokens. So this is an area that is currently overlooked and is not being compensated. So using this cryptocurrency, we can incentivize those suppliers to respond faster for things like RFQs, as well as an ongoing incentive model compensating suppliers for the integrity of their product data management records on the blockchain. So every time a token is used to access the original records that was supplied by those suppliers, it's an incentive for them to provide more complete, more accurate record accessible in the blockchain, and it's another form of a recurring revenue stream for them in the crypto economy. And we believe that these new incentive structures will inspire suppliers to embrace blockchain technology so that they will be more proactive, troubleshooting their own blockchain compatibility and industrial Internet of Things connectedness directly from the shop floor, further accelerating the ramp up towards the connected smart factory of the fourth industrial revolution. These are very big ideas, so let it sink in for a minute. So we've been covered in the press before. As a part of the federal partnership, we were mentioned on the White House website, as a part of the city partnership in various other publications. Because we're also involved, I mentioned this token, so the company is engaged in a token sale at the moment, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it with the opportunity, if the opportunity presents itself. So we are in a token sale at the moment, and we were rated, and we had one of the highest ratings. More about the market, so there's validation for the market that our model is applicable to. These are some of those metrics, and since we're running behind, I'll just stream through that. This is the size of the market of the specific components that we're initially targeting, which are precision parts. And this is our team. So I'm up here today, and this is the rest of our team, including some of our blockchain developers. And a member of our design team is in the audience. Sharon's in the back there. And these are some of our advisors. These are very influential people in the industry. The fellow there, Xiaochun Li, he's the CTO of that federal partnership that I just mentioned. He's one of our advisors. We also have a designer of the Apple iPhone on our advisory board. And in the top left corner up there, we have one of the early investors and founders in eBay and PayPal. So we're very fortunate and privileged to have them advising us. And just wrapping up, this is just a little bit about our token sale. We're offering some bonuses at the moment. So thank you very much. This is our social media. If there's still time, hopefully there's still time for some questions. And yeah, I'm sure you must have questions.
I have two questions. One is, you said the blockchain might affect to the CapEx budget by mobilizing resources and aggregating marginal gain. So could you explain a little bit more for this, because I didn't understand it. And the second one is to bring those systems into the physical transaction like procurement. Do we need to adjust the law, or we can just start using after it's the system implemented? There's a second question.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the second question?
The second question is to bring those use system into the physical transaction like procurement. Do we need to adjust law? Okay.
Oh, the law?
Yeah, or just we can start using.
You mean like contract law?
Yeah, something like that.
In order to execute smart contracts?
We need to adjust the like regulation or law. or we just.
I'll start with your first question. So the context of so my comment on capex, the ROI and various other metric-driven capex decisions and the role that plays in your capex decisions. The reference to the blockchain was with regards to providing proper incentive for budgeting around the preparations for investment to be competitive when the fourth industrial revolution arrives. So financial planning, traditional financial planning and traditional ROI review practices are based on the traditional metrics, lean manufacturing, total landed cost and supply chain, and they tend to dictate what your sales and marketing budget is going to look like for a particular quarter. My point was speaking to that with the implementation of the blockchain, we foresee the derivation or the windfall of these marginal gains on top of that through the applied layer of this new economy, particularly in this crypto economy. And because of the marginal gains, the accretive gains that will come from a more responsive supply chain, from a proactive supply chain network, from access to original documents on the blockchain, that all of these efficiencies will amount to, they will equate to the aggregation of marginal gains, which will add increased efficiencies and further incentive on top of that. So it's a fairly abstract concept at the moment, but we believe that because of the massive amount of investment that's required in order to reach this $4 trillion of this projected industrial internet by 2024, which is just 6 or 7 years away, that traditional CapEx and ROI, traditional ROI metric driven CapEx decisions are going to need to be looked at in different ways. Just in the same way as right now, when an investor is going and looking at their options in the market, they're looking at investing in a stock, investing in a bond, putting their money in a savings account according to traditional metrics versus what is this Bitcoin thing? How do I invest in that? So that gap or that jump between investment decisions driven by what is the prevailing interest rate in the market right now? What is the prevailing beta of return in the stock if I put my money in the stock market? Versus what is the expected gain or return if I put an investment into Bitcoin or some type of cryptocurrency? It's a completely different model of investment-based decision making. So that's what I was making a reference to there, and it merits more study and understanding, and I think that's perhaps one more for the fintech application. But I'm saying it's relevant. It's very relevant to the on-ramp to this projected $4 trillion industry that we're looking at for the industrial Internet of Things. And I think it definitely becomes extremely relevant when a large organization or a large manufacturing is looking at how they're going to deploy their CapEx decisions, be it in the blockchain or in their heavy industry around their supply chain. And for your second question about are they going to need to change the law, was it? Regulation. So regulation around how the blockchain is used, or because the government right now, I mean, there's government initiatives in Europe, there's government initiatives at the federal level in the United States. My understanding is that the Japanese government has been extremely progressive and is embracing the technology. The U.S. government currently has initiated several studies at how blockchain technology can impact things like the manufacturing industry, in defense, and in the naval industry in particular. At this point, whether or not there's regulation required or additional regulation required, I think that has to do more with anti-money laundering requirements and those types of things, and those laws and regulations are already in place, but whether or not it's going to require new regulations is yet to be seen. Additional questions?
I think we're a little short on time.
We're short on time. Okay, well, thank you very much. If there are more questions, I can stick around afterwards. Thank you.